Hello and welcome to Agenda 2063 TV show, the only show in Ghana region continent telling you authentic stories about Africa's integration. And even though we spent the better part of the series talking a little bit about the African Continental Free Trade Area, we have kept it consistent on reporting Agenda 2063 because we feel that it is an important element of Africa's integration that people need to understand. So finally, in today's last show for 2020, we are very happy to be bringing a live Zoom edition to speak to Professor Emmanuel Nnadozie of Africa Capacity Building Foundation. We're going to take a break in a minute and we'll be right back to the actual interview. We'll be right back. Let me know when. All right, so welcome back from the break and welcome to all the participants, but especially Professor Emmanuel Nnadozie of the African Capacity Building Foundation. He is the Executive Secretary of the Africa Building Foundation and he has taken time out of his very busy schedule to speak to us about issues around the African Continental Free Trade Area as well as Agenda 2063. Just recently, the Africa Capacity Building Foundation, I think just about a month or two ago, held the Think Tank Summit. This is something that Africa Capacity Building Foundation has a level of comparative advantage over. So we are going to be asking him to give us the takeaways of that Think Tank Summit, and then we'll segue that into Agenda 2063, whether member states are ready for it and whether member states are ready for the African Continental Free Trade Area, because we realize that ACBF is a major stakeholder. As the name suggests, it is offering capacity building for member states. And so they need to play a major role in this whole AfTA enterprise. So welcome, Professor Nnadozie, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. Thank you once again. Maybe we can start off by going back to the past, back to November, when you held the Think Tank Summit. It was about 2-3 day summit. A lot of people participated. It was around the African Continental Free Trade Area. Maybe you can give us an update of the major takeaways of that summit, because I think a lot of people may have missed and they may want to be refreshed about the centrality of that Think Tank Summit.
Yes. Exactly on the 17th and 18th of November, we had this Africa Think Tank Summit.
Mm-hmm.
As you probably already know, the ACBF is the coordinator of the African Think Tank Network.
Yes.
Because we have created or supported over 50 think tanks in Africa, in many countries, including Ghana, by the way, but a few of them very successful there. Because we believe that think tanks are central to, evidence-based policy making, and to conduct certain kinds of analysis and studies that helps to solve development problems. So we had, a few hundred think tanks that participated in this meeting, mm-hmm. And the idea being that every year we provide this platform for think tanks to really deliberate on issues that concern them as think tanks, because of the uniqueness of African think tanks in the sense of, especially from sustainability standpoint, influence making, promoting policy uptake, as well as financial challenges that many of them face, where you don't have private foundations that will be supporting them. So this is where ACBF have come into the picture to assist in that. But the most important thing is that this particular think tank summit focused on the African Continental Free Trade Area, which we think is a major game changer, and that we believe that think tanks have a critical role to play in assisting African countries in actually not just implementing it, but benefiting from the AfCFTA. So this is the reason why the platform provided this opportunity for getting all the experts together and to see precisely whether African countries are ready to be able to really move this ahead, and what sort of capacity will be required, and how do you build this capacity, and how do you ensure a better coordination so that there will be a whole lot more, a coordinated approach instead of duplication of efforts that could lead to resource wastefulness and undesired economic outcomes. So, in a nutshell, this is the sort of things that they did. What are the capacity challenges facing countries and other frontline institutions, including state and non-state actors, and such as private sector, SMEs, civil society organizations, and what are the most effective partnerships that can be built to be able to really handle this? And what should be the role of an organization dedicated to capacity development, such as ACBF? How can it play its role more effectively in addressing these institutional and human capacity challenges?
And even at the best of times, sustainability of think tanks was always going to be quite tricky. And now that this has been superimposed by the context of COVID, how do you foresee progress that we're going to make on this? Because already, even without COVID, sustainability was tricky. And now, are there any, let's say, immediate things that ACBF will be providing for think tanks as they rebuild themselves because of this devastation of COVID?
Yes, ACBF has done a number of things regarding the sustainability of think tanks.
Okay.
One important thing is the fact that the ACBF's approach to capacity development is not only holistic, but also it pays attention to, if it's human capacity, to issues of retention, utilization, and harmonization. But for institutions such as think tanks, upfront, ACBF pays attention to issue of sustainability, and this is built into the support that we give to think tanks. So we don't only in the past provide financing for them to be established or for them to strengthen themselves, but we have to strengthen their institutional capacity and then provide an opportunity for them to share lessons and learn from other think tanks who have been more successful in assuring their own sustainability. And so we have a phased approach whereby we try to stay for some time to enable the think tanks to get a strong foothold and then assist them with all kinds of support that will enable them to become self-sustaining and self-supporting. Some of them are lucky; they become, support the government, and the governments therefore put them in the budget. But others have found really very creative ways of, enhancing their relevance and also getting resources to sustain themselves. But you're right; the COVID-19 pandemic has hit everybody very hard. And even us, our own ability to support is limited now because of the impact of the pandemic, especially with our partners. But one thing we have done is to mobilize. We actually mobilize our partners for this think tank summit, ranging from the African Development Bank, the AfCFTA Bank, the UNDP, the Arab Bank for Economic Development in Africa, the UNECA, and OECD. To see how we can all work together to make sure that we pay attention to enhancing the sustainability of think tanks in Africa and making sure that they play their role properly, not just for Agenda 2063, but even in the fight the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic and other development challenges.
In your earlier statement, you talked about some of the creative ways in which some of the think tanks, have used to make themselves more relevant and also be able to sustain themselves. Can you give us an idea of some of the things some of them have done?
Well, the key thing here is making sure that they are focusing on what is important to their clients or their potential consumers or consumers of their goods and services.
Mm-hmm.
That's one. In other words, what we recommend for them is do not just go and start doing studies that nobody might be interested in, or do analysis or trying to have a solution looking for a problem. But instead, you should engage those people, whether they are the public sector or the other organizations, including the private sector, by the way, to find out the issues that are of critical importance to them and focus on that and demonstrate what you can do. So that's one. Number two is to make sure that you are looking for ways, have a resource mobilization strategy that will help you to provide either fee-for-service, mobilize fee-for-service, or to be able to get resources from some foundations or other kinds of sources of funding. And the third thing is also pay attention to marketing and making sure that you promote what you do and promote yourself. And and we also give them ideas about the successful think tanks and who can also assist them with what they can do to get those, to maintain their own sustainability as well.
Fantastic. Professor, maybe this time I'm going to go a little back in history once again, because the Africa Capacity Building Foundation was not always an AU agency. I think it started in 1991 and then over time had support from UNDP and many other stakeholders. But it was only about 2 or 3 years ago that it finally became an AU agency. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about why the wisdom of AU policymakers, member states, they realized that ACBF needed to be part of the AU family.
Yes, very important question. The African Capacity Building Foundation, as you rightly pointed out, was created in 1991, so it's almost 30 years old now.
Yeah.
And it was designated AU's Specialized Agency for Capacity Building in 2017. This is actually in recognition by the heads of states of the impact that the foundation has had all across the continent and the achievements that it has made in supporting countries, in building capacities of their institutions, in building human capacity as well, and in supporting even the AU itself, because ACBF, believe it or not, was a strong supporter of the African Union and its organs. Okay. That is to say, especially the African Union Commission, institutional support, helping with, in fact, providing funding at the initial phase. So, in recognition of all these achievements and contributions that the foundation has made across the continent, that's how this designation came about. But also, it is because our board of governors and our executive board really supported when I floated the idea that in order to enhance, again, relevance and sustainability of the foundation, that we needed to anchor it properly within the development architecture of the continent. Because before then, it wasn't quite sure what ACBF really was, whether it was a World Bank project or or African member states project, or it was something that was just existing out there. Okay. So of course, we aligned our vision. We changed our vision to an Africa capable of achieving its own development, and then aligned our work with Agenda 2063, which even led us to develop a lot of analysis on the capacity imperatives for achieving Agenda 2063, including strategies for building those capacities. So this is, in a nutshell, the long and short of the story about ACBF becoming one of the key pillars in terms of the development architecture of Africa. Okay,
and I'm sure to most of us, anytime we hear about capacity building, It's about, meetings and trainings that will help us all better understand how certain things work. How does that translate at the AU member states level when you talk about capacity development? How do you say, let's say we're taking a country like Liberia and using ACBF to build capacity for it. How does that work normally? Are there some studies that are done initially, and then out of that study you realize that maybe there are some shortcomings in that country, and therefore these are the options that would help build their capacity? How does it normally work?
Absolutely. Again, very, very good question. It's important, before I even go straight to responding to your question, to understand that capacity is an all-encompassing concept. It is not just simply going to a workshop. There are a lot of organizations that go there, they will have one workshop and make a lot of noise about it, and people will congratulate them. But ACBF is a different principle when it comes to capacity development. Mm-hmm. Number one thing that we do is to not have a solution looking for a problem. So we just must make sure that we know what problem we're trying to solve. Sometimes it is driven by us, but mostly it is demand driven by the recipients and the beneficiaries. So you use Liberia as an example. If we get into Liberia and meet the minister, and I've done that before, including the former president, and they sort of highlighted challenges they're facing. So we, as you rightly pointed out, first thing we do is to do some kind of diagnostic work, which is what we call the capacity needs assessment. And then so we have a holistic understanding of where the country is in this regard. And then we're working together. So this is something that is participatory, which is also one of our principles, mm-hmm. Principles meaning that owner participation in the process, whether it's even in the study itself, in the discussion about the analysis, in the validation, and then the prioritization. Then having done that, out of this comes a capacity development strategy or plan.
Okay.
And then that's how we now say that's how we intervene. If, for example, they say in the Ministry of Finance, we just realized that we have a big problem here, not just simply about experts in macroeconomic management or financial, public finance management or budgeting or whatever, but that we don't even have, the systems in place, whether they are computers or other kinds of things. We don't even have a performance and a system that helps to measure what people are. We actually, sometimes it will involve even not having the buildings or not having adequate space or not having, human resource policies and monitoring and evaluation systems, as well as strong financial management systems. So these are the things that we look at, and then we begin to address them in a holistic manner. Because if you train all the people and give them expertise, and they go back to an office that is either inhospitable or they don't have the equipment to work, you have wasted your resources because they're not going to be able to perform. And so we realize that that's the case. And then the third thing that we do then is to ensure that we have a multi-year program. So it's not one workshop or one buying a computer and giving to somebody. No, it's a multi-year program because capacity is not built overnight. Mm-hmm. But you pay attention to issue I mentioned before, especially regarding human capacity development, that as you build capacity, you should make sure you pay attention to retaining the capacity. There's nothing for you to train people and then you lose them to other places, to the private sector, to overseas. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, that when you retain them, you also fully utilize them. And then the utilization and maybe harmonization and all out. So these are the things. There is this ownership thing that is in there. There is this looking at it from a long-term standpoint and not just simply a one workshop business. Mm-hmm. And number 4 is making sure that you pay attention to the issues I mentioned: retention, utilization, and harmonization. And finally, you ensure that there is buy-in from the leadership in this process of doing that, and that you have planned for sustainability once you have established things that are there.
Fantastic. Now let's shift over a little to the topic of the African Continental Free Trade Area. Since the African Continental Free Trade Area is just really upon us in a couple of weeks' time, we do know that organizations like the UN Economic Commission for Africa has been offering a lot of support to help member states develop strategies to respond to the African Continental Free Trade Area. Where does the Africa Capacity Building Foundation come in at this point, also as an AU agency to help support member states on the, let's say, a plan or a strategy for the African Continental Free Trade Area?
Yes, thank you very much for that question. Again, we have been, just like the other organizations, been focusing on areas that we believe we have comparative advantage, and so that we will avoid wasteful duplication of efforts. And so we coordinate very well, allowing the political leadership and the championing of the process for the African Union, the UNEC helping countries to develop their strategy, and then AfCFTA Bank, for example, helping to develop trade financing and payment systems that will enable trade to actually happen. But ACBF comes in to look at the issue of country readiness. How ready are countries to do this? And so first thing we have done is to develop, again, a strategy for addressing this issue, and which will involve mapping, helping to create awareness and commitment and the operational readiness, and also helping, again, to develop the skills that will help the operationalization of AfCFTA at various levels, whether it's at the country level or at the regional level, regional economic communities, as well as the African Union itself. Mm-hmm. And then we are now working on a major project about digital capacity building, because we believe that this is a very important area that will enhance trade, especially for SMEs and the youth entrepreneurs and others. Because if there's something that the COVID-19 pandemic has shown us, it is that those who had digital capacity or digitalization were better off than those who did not have that. In other words, when there's lockdown and you couldn't function, and you're not in this game, then you have to suffer the consequences. And then, of course, there's institutional support as well. As I mentioned, I gave examples, and I will be more specific on that particular point. Mm-hmm. And policy support, and then sharing knowledge and creating policy forums. So this coming year, we have some priority areas. And of course, fostering the implementation of AfCFTA is one of those areas. In fact, it's number one priority, in addition to dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. So we are going to enhance the capacity of the AfCFTA Secretariat, which is there in Accra, Ghana. Mm-hmm. We've already discussed with the Secretary General on how. So this is kind of institutional support I made to, so that they can actually be capacitated to begin to do their job. Of course, AfCFTA Bank is also there, so we're really working with them to provide this support. And we can help them to develop things like operational manuals, and then improve their processes, operational processes and procedures. And then we, working with AFDB, will deploy, subject matter experts to provide technical support to the AfCFTA Secretariat and the regional economic communities, and support the production of manufacturing manuals for training, especially in areas related to manufacturing and trade. We're also working together with AfCFTA Bank to promote factoring, which is very important for intra-trade and trade finance as well. So there's a lot of things that we're going to do. We believe that, as we said, signing the agreement is one thing, ratifying it is another thing. After ratifying it, and now implementing it is a different thing. Okay. Even if you have a fantastic strategy, but you don't have the capacity to implement it, then you know what is going to happen. Mm-hmm. That is, it will just remain a fantastic strategy that doesn't lead to anything. Okay. But finally, we're also going to work with the private sector and others. We have already organized some work in getting the private sector and other stakeholders so that the government can fully better understand exactly what their needs are in terms of trading come January 1.
Okay, fantastic. I think at this stage, maybe we can resort to some of the participants who are listening to us and find out whether if they have any questions that they also want to address to you. Maybe we can do that, guys. If anyone has a question, they can, some of the participants. So are there any participants who would like to ask a question to Professor Nnadozie? They should just go ahead.
Yes, good afternoon, colleagues. I don't know if you can hear me well.
Yes. Kindly state your name. State your name and where you're coming from, and then maybe you can ask your question.
Thank you. My name is Milton Nnadozie. Okay. I am with the Institute for Economics and Peace, and I'm calling in from Harare, Zimbabwe. Thank you very much, Professor Nnadozie. It's good to see you. Thank you for your wonderful contributions as well. My question revolves around what you would make, or what your opinion would be on the effect that the relationship between the US of A and China is, given that there are constant tensions between them that threaten to spill out and affect the rest of the world. And also just a brief comment on the effect of what has been called the debt trap diplomacy of China on the continental free trade area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very good question indeed. Well, let me start with the first one. If we look at it from a trade standpoint, I suspect your question goes beyond trade. But if we look at it from the trade standpoint, this is one more illustration of the reason why the WTO needs to be strengthened, and action needs to be taken very quickly and very rapidly in confirming the Director General of WTO. I think there has been consensus, so it will be important for that process to go forward. Because one key role that can be that the WTO can play is in assisting the negotiation between these two countries, so that they can come to some sort of understanding, especially from the standpoint of trade issues. But on the other ones, on issues that are broader than that, again, we're all hopeful that things will improve, especially since the elections of the past in the United States. So there's that kind of sense of optimism that at least the approach that will be used in the engagement process will result in something that is not exactly the same way it is today, and will enable the people from the rest of the world to be able to benefit from this issue. And then on the second issue, which is on, if you remind me again what that was.
I think the death trap of China on AfCFTA.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. You know that there are just two ways of looking at an issue. Something like that is that there is a lender and there's a borrower. So if you decide to accept debt, it means to me that you are aware of the potential dangers facing over indebtedness or over borrowing, especially if you borrow and consume rather than invest in things that will lead to higher economic growth and greater development. So in this kind of picture, we need to look at it very, very carefully to say, remember the last time they used to use the word odious debt, where a lot of indiscipline happened in Africa, and people, because money was available, went ahead and keep borrowing left, right, and center without any regards to the impact it will have on their economies and on their societies. So I think in Africa, people debt is necessary, don't get me wrong, because especially if you want to make massive capital investment, you really, sometimes you cannot have enough of the resources to be able to, build a dam or railroad or, build an airport. So chances are that you need to mobilize that. But I will recommend to African countries, rather than borrowing, which seems to be an issue, especially if resources are available, to pay more attention to investment. The same money you're borrowing from China, you could have them to invest in your country. So that way, it's a win-win situation for everybody. So you don't owe them, and therefore, but you still have, inflows that is necessary for your thing. But they are not paying enough attention to investment. A lot of people are paying attention to debt. So this is what I can say about this particular issue.
Okay, thank you so very much, Milton. Is there anybody else who has a question that they would like to put to Professor? They should please just go ahead and do so. But first of all, introduce yourself and then ask your question.
Sorry, can I go ahead?
Yes. It sounds like there's some noise in your background.
Sorry, I am not in a quiet place. Let me move away. Can you hear me now?
I think it's better, yes.
Okay, thank you. So this is Audrey Baini, part of the After Policy Network.
Okay.
I had a question for Professor. Are there any plans in place to ensure that women will succeed once this AfCFTA comes into place in January? Any special plans that focuses on women?
Okay.
Who I think have been marginalized to an extent up until now.
Okay.
Thank you very much for a very important question. One good thing that I can tell you that came out from Agenda 2063, which I participated in developing, spent quite some years, was the fact that, and of course, thanks to the leadership of Madam Dlamini Zuma, who was the chair of the African Union Commission, was that women's issues were center stage. Okay, but I must admit that as this process of AfCFTA is unfolding, somehow I don't believe we have center stage women and issues related to women in the process. And we must do that. We must do even more. We at ACBF we really pay attention to this particular dimension. In fact, this is why one of the things we are going to do next year is this digitalization, supporting digitalization in the continent, paying attention to small-scale traders in agricultural goods, women in particular, or even focusing uniquely on them in some instances. And so, but there is this new organization that is created, the African Business Council, which is now been launched and led by a woman, which is good. And she has made it clear that their first order of business is to really make sure that women are really integrated in the process of this trading system that starts in January 1.
Okay. Okay, just before I go in to ask another question, thank you very much, Professor, for that answer. We are live on Facebook, the Association of African Universities TV. So anyone who wants to check us out on Facebook, you can do so. You can get the whole video there as well once we are done. Thank you for those who have asked questions so far. Are there any other questions? Hello? I'm sure people have other questions to ask. If you do, feel free to unmute your mic and ask your question. Hello? I'm suspecting there aren't any other questions for now. So let me quickly then go to ACBF. Oh, okay. Dorothy. Dorothy has a question. Dorothy, kindly unmute your mic, introduce yourself, and go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bensa. My name is Dorothy Adebanjo, and I am very interested in the role that ACBF can play, given that I understand their work quite well. My question to you, sir, is given ACBF's mandate and the nature of AfCFTA creating a common market, what skills does ACBF think it should build? Is it the entrepreneurs, the people who are going to actually be trading across countries, or the countries implementing institutions? And I think you've answered the second half about the support of the AfCFTA Secretariat. So are you also going to be on the flip side in looking to build the capacity of the entrepreneurs who are quite excited about this common market that is going to start in January? Thank you.
Thank you, Dorothy.
Thank you. Yes, excellent question. You know, even though there's a lot of commonalities among African countries, but all countries are not at the same level when it comes to the development of entrepreneurship, and especially in areas of industrialization and trading. So it will depend on, but the majority of the countries, you're absolutely correct, madam, that face this challenge of having the skills and entrepreneurs that are necessary, first of all, to produce something that is tradable, because if everybody is growing yams, you wonder who is going to buy from whom. But if they add some value to that, that might become even something that could now become tradable and bring more income. So that dimension is very, very important. We are working with our partners to develop the strategy for handling this, because it's an onerous task. 55 countries, 1.2 billion people. So sometimes you just wonder where to begin. But we actually, as we speak now, we have some projects in a number of countries that are focusing on women entrepreneurs, working together with the Arab Bank for Economic Development in Africa. And in January, I'm discussing with the Director General how to scale this up, to show you that we understand that these are the people that are going to drive the African continental free trade area, and therefore, assisting them not just to become more successful as entrepreneurs, but also in trading across the borders and be able to realize more income. So we do have programs like that. And I also know that the African Development Bank does have similar programs and others too, to support smallholders, women entrepreneurs, and the youth as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you. Could I just add one small question, please?
Yeah, please go ahead, Dorothy.
Thank you. Executive Secretary General, you mentioned at the end of that response the issue of agribusiness. And that is really something, because it is what Africa should potentially do best.
Yes.
I represent an organization called Africa Remembers, and we are about building capacity for smallholder farmers, supporting their, to be resilient in the face of the challenges that they face. What plans, if any, does ACBF have around agribusiness in Africa? Thank you.
Thank you. At the beginning, I did mention that one of the things we want to do in 2021 is to pay attention to agribusiness development, especially about those who are involved in small holding, and to be able to trade more and using digital mechanisms. So that's one area that we want to do something. But also, we've been supporting, the agribusiness organizations, because that's one way we have figured out that this is the best way to handle this, since ACBF cannot go to every community or every state or every subnational authority or even national authority. The best thing is to partner with those who have these kinds of organizations and are already working with the target groups, and therefore develop partnerships with them, and so that we can help in doing that. As I mentioned before, one of the projects we are doing is supporting women entrepreneurs, but the other one is the one called Empowering Women in Agriculture, which is headed by, or rather championed by, the former president of Liberia, Madam Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, and former president of Nigeria, Olusegun Obasanjo. And so there we're working together with a lot of partners and stakeholders to really empower women in agriculture. So these are the sort of things that can be deepened, that can be expanded, that can be moved forward, especially in light of the AfCFTA. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Any other questions from anybody? Failing which, maybe I can proceed and ask a question about ACBF and its assessment of Agenda 2063, especially in the light of the fact that there's Agenda 2030 as well, which is the Sustainable Development Goals. You talk to many civil society activists here and there, and a lot of them are wondering why one has not pushed Agenda 2063 in the way that SDGs has been pushed. It is not to say that both of them do not complement each other, but given that ACBF is one of the AU agencies helping promote and offering capacity to member states on Agenda 2063, is there anything in your view, Professor, that you think you can tell us about the road for building greater capacity on Agenda 2063? Because the SDGs are UN initiative, and we mustn't lose sight of it. Everyone subscribes to that. But at the end of the day, Agenda 2063 is also, African, it could call it African dream, because 7 aspirations, 14 flagship programs. We need to get more people understanding this. And does it not start with member states understanding and it's trickling down eventually into, different spaces in the country about the centrality of Agenda 2063?
Well, I can answer that question by by saying a couple of things.
Okay.
First thing I would say is the glass may not be full, but I don't believe it's half empty.
Okay.
I think that for a number of reasons, I'm actually encouraged for the first time, because we at ACBF did do an analysis of the implementation of agreements and whatever that the African heads of states put together, the AU. And the record was not encouraging. But that is whether they've been ratified or domesticated or even applied.
Mm-hmm.
So if you see that in just 2 years ago, in March 2018, what is going to happen on January 1st this year was just launched, and 54 countries signed up to it. And there's about, I believe, 34 now that have ratified, and others have actually said that it's just a matter of time before they ratify, and the trading is going to start in. So that is highly encouraging. It is. I don't think it has ever happened in the history of the continent. Maybe, the African Union itself, maybe some of the political things in the OAU may have happened as fast as well. But this particular thing is encouraging. But is encouraging enough? The answer is no. But I will also argue that it's not just only Agenda 2063. The SDGs itself is still not facing the sort of publicity and the sort of acceptance that it should have. And a lot of that has to do with some of the developed countries who just basically have not really done what they're supposed to do. And a lot of things happening in the world also remove attention from that. But as someone who participated in the development of the Agenda 2063, which, by the way, was done before the SDGs, if you remember.
Yes, definitely, 2013.
Yes, exactly. We started by finding out whether the Africans wanted, at the end of MDGs, whether they wanted an MDG that is extended, or they wanted an MDG that is modified, or an MDG plus, or they wanted it to be scrapped altogether.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, this was before anyone else in the world was even thinking about the post-2015 agenda. And so Africans say they wanted MDG modified to include things that they think are more important. So we went ahead and started to develop certain things that we felt should be in a post-2015 agenda. And eventually, what emerged was the African Common Position on the post-2015 agenda. And for once again, Africans went through their representatives in New York and in Geneva and made sure that they are all aware of what African Common Position was, so that when the debate will start, everybody's not going to be talking, across each other, but rather they had a common vision. So I was highly encouraged when the former president of the US, Obama, stated that he was saying, I've looked at the African Common Position and I kind of like it.
Okay.
And so what you have actually in the SDGs is what you have in Agenda 2063, minus regional integration. Okay. That's really what it is. So in a sense, even though we are not popularizing it and promoting it the way we should be promoting it, we should take heart at the fact that there isn't the kind of divergence you saw before in two existing things. But this time around, there is a serious convergence. And what Africa has said that we don't want to have two different monitoring and evaluation systems. We'll have just one. Okay. And because there's something there, so we'll have one to monitor both things at the same time. And thirdly, because I did indicate that if you come from Lagos Plan of Action, the Abuja Treaty, the you name it, everything that has been done in between, very good programs that they never quite got, including NEPAD, by the way, that couldn't get implemented the way we thought they should be implemented. One of the major reasons is that nobody ever paid attention to capacity. And this is why we took time to carefully analyze the capacity dimensions or imperatives for achieving the objectives of Agenda 2063. We began with the first 10-year plan to say, if you want to achieve this first 10-year plan, implement it, what sort of capacity do you need, especially with regard to the flagship projects, as well as what countries will need to do that. So those are available for anybody who wants to have them. And that is the basis upon which the interventions we're doing are made.
Okay, thank you very much for that overview of the topic. As we begin to run down the show, let me just quickly question the participants. If there are not, maybe find for whole institutions from a bank and all deep institutions. In your view, what do we need to keep? What do we need to keep our? What do we need to do to keep our eye on the ball on the negotiations? Because there's so much going on that ordinary people are not going to be able to take in everything. So what would you recommend that we, ordinary citizens do so they can get to understand what the whole African Continental Free Trade Area is about?
Yes, I think as we have already seen, the COVID-19 pandemic affected the rollout and implementation of the AfCFTA, because this was supposed to have happened in June this year, but it's happening in January 2021. And we are happy that the heads of state during just past 2 weeks in Johannesburg, when they had the extraordinary summit on AfCFTA, unequivocally stated that they want this to happen come January 1, whether everybody is ready or not, COVID-19 or no COVID-19, that they want this thing to happen. And that is the way it should be. Because I'm a believer in that development is not something that happens only when you have the optimal conditions available. You'll never have that. So you've got to say, what can I do within the limits of the constraints I face as an individual? What can I do? Where do I start? This is why a sister that spoke about agriculture and agribusiness, and especially women in there, should know that if Africa does not pay attention to the agricultural sector in a very serious manner, not just simply to produce and export, coffee and cocoa and bean, and tea and the rest of them, but to add value to these things. That's where agripreneurs or agribusiness and all that will come into the picture. And the same thing also comes to industrialization. Industrializing based on your primary commodities, because that's what you have already, and that's where you can start. And we have proven while I was still at UNECA that this is doable in spite of all the theories in economics that tells you it's not possible. So for me, the final thing is, if we don't solve the COVID-19 pandemic, it will be difficult for us to, for Africa to move forward immediately and recover from this pandemic. So solving that, dealing with the economic consequences of the disease, making sure that vulnerable people are protected and supported, and putting in place the right macroeconomic policies, especially when it comes to managing our public finances and dealing with the debt. And then, of course, paying attention to our women and our youth. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much. And thank you once again, Professor Nnadozie, for taking time out of your busy schedule to speak with us. And we hope to be able to engage you sometime in 2021 when you are less busy. I know it's going to be quite a busy period for you, but we will try and through your able staff, find out whether we can get you to give us an update sometime in 2021 on developments around ACBF and AfCFTA. I think it'll be good for people to begin to buy into the idea of the great work that the ACBF is also doing. So thank you once again. I want to thank all the participants who took time to also tune in. I'm sure there are further questions that you may have. We'll be happy to take a look at these questions and see whether we can send them further on. But Professor Nnadozie, thank you so much. I know that you should probably be spending time with family for Christmas, but alas, you are here, speaking to us. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me, and also let me thank your wonderful participants. Those questions are found, very, very profound and very instructive. Thank you very much, and I wish everybody all the best. Stay safe, especially during this, holiday season. Happy holidays and fantastic 2021 to everybody.
All right. So thank you once again, and all participants, thank you. So that was the live Zoom interview with Professor Nnadozie of the African Capacity Building Foundation. This, as we indicated, was the last show of 2020. Wanted it to be a very interactive one to get people to also ask questions. So thank you to all the production crew for making sure that this happened. And we hope to be able to do similar things going forward in 2021 in a very, very crazy, busy year. So thank you once again. And don't forget to read your Agenda 2063. It's not that difficult. So just pick a copy, download it, and get ready for more Agenda 2063 conversations in 2021. Have a great day. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, and goodbye.